So with bowl games starting tomorrow, today we are going to break down the second half of the bowl game season, or at least the ones that I don't plan on making individual videos on. So, with the intro out of the way, I'd like to say hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I am your host, as always, Nathan, and today we're going to jump right into it and discuss the second half of the bowl games for the 2023 season. Starting off with Bowling Green and Minnesota in the Quick Lane Bowl. Now, these are two teams that I think play a similar style of offense. Bowling Green and Minnesota both do not particularly like to throw the football, and they are not particularly good at throwing the football. These are two power, run first, whatever descriptors you want to use that involves running the football. That's what these two teams are. They play good defense, at least for their level of competition. However, the fact that both of these teams do like to run the ball actually plays in favor of Minnesota in this game. Because when you have the superior athletes, if you're playing the kind of game that you want to play, you're probably going to win. However, again, Bowling Green would want to win this game more than Minnesota. For Minnesota, nobody really cares if you lose this game. You're 5-7, you're not going to have a winning season, and we all kind of know who PJ Fleck is at this point. He's somebody who every 2 or 3 years is actually going to put together a team that has a chance to win 8, 9, maybe even 10 games. This is not that year. Also, Minnesota has got by the transfer portal. Their starting quarterback, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, has decided to transfer, so even though the passing game has been borderline inept for most of the year, it could potentially be even worse. So there is a lot of nuance and things here to unpack, but ultimately when it comes down to it, I think wanting it more is probably just going to be who wins this game. And as I've already said, I think Bowling Green will want it more. So I'm going to go with Bowling Green winning the game 24-21. Up next is the First Responders Bowl between Rice and Texas State. Rice has been one of the cooler stories this year. They're a team that has traditionally been extraordinarily bad, and they're kind of putting it together. Mike Bloomgren appears to potentially be bringing this team to some form of consistency, so that's good and cool to see. However, Texas State is just a better football team than them. Their offense is much better, and Rice's defense has been a bit of a problem this year. Texas State's defense has also not been great, but it's not as much of a problem as Rice's defense. I do think Rice will be able to move and score the ball, so if this becomes a shootout, obviously you never really know who's going to win. However, I do think Texas State, when it comes down to it, has the better offensive personnel, the better scheme, and more talent than Rice. So I'm going to pick Texas State to win the game 38-28. Next bowl game is the Guaranteed Rate Bowl between Kansas and UNLV. This is actually somewhat of an entertaining and fun matchup to think and talk about. Obviously, the biggest thing is Jalen Daniels going to play? Is he going to transfer? And is he going to return to Kansas next year? I hope he plays in this game, and I hope he returns to Kansas next year, because I think Lance Leopold is putting together a program that could legitimately compete in the new look Big 12. And Kansas's boosters and athletic department does appear to be willing to provide the funds necessary to perhaps build themselves a little bit of a program here. Now, even if Kansas decides to hold out Daniels for the bowl game, Bean has actually been playing pretty well for them this year, and by actually playing pretty well, I mean he's been playing for the most part. Daniels has been hurt. I think he's played like 2 or 3 games, so it's mainly been Jason Bean. And Devin Neal is a very, very good running back. They've got a couple of other running options that are solid as well. And there is no quarterback controversy because I believe Jason Bean is out of eligibility after this year. So Kansas next year could just have Daniels come in and be the guy, assuming health. So that is very good for them. This is one of the best programs that is rising up the ranks, so to speak, and maybe the most confident one in terms of my personal opinion, in terms of actually being able to consistently turn into a 8-10 win, perhaps dark horse competing for a conference title kind of team consistently. I didn't mean to go on a long rant about the state of the Kansas football program, but it is what it is. So let's go ahead and shift here to talking about UNLV here. Barry Odom, I think, has done a good job at UNLV. This was his first year, and they went 9-4. Went to the Mountain West Conference Championship game. Now they got blasted by Boise State, but, you know, it is what it is. Overall, I think he's done a good job so far. It is just 1 year, and he was inheriting some good players, so we don't really know if this is going to be a consistent thing for him, but at least for this year, I think the team's pretty solid. In terms of how these two teams match up, I think the matchup greatly favors Kansas. UNLV's defense just isn't very good, and Kansas's offense is borderline great. I don't think it's elite, but I do think from a college football perspective, it's a great offense, and I don't particularly see a way where UNLV is going to be able to slow them down all that much. And on top of that, Kansas's defense has actually been a fairly underrated commodity this year, especially their passing defense. That's been pretty good this year, actually. Now, they don't have a whole lot of pass rush, but that is a different story. Their actual coverage unit has been pretty good this year, even by Power 5 standards. So it's all these factors combined here, which is why I am going to predict that Kansas is going to win this game by the score of 34-24. Next bowl game here is the Military Bowl between Tulane and Virginia Tech. Now, if the transfer portal wasn't a thing, I think this would be one of the biggest matchups, like in terms of underrated. Let's really see where the group of five is compared to the Power 5 sort of game. And the transfer portal is here, though, and Virginia Tech and Tulane have both gotten got by the transfer portal quite a bit. More so on defense for Tulane, and more so on offense for Virginia Tech, in my opinion. So I guess in terms of matchups, that kind of balances out a little bit. But I don't know who's going to win this game. This is one of the games where I'm the least confident talking about, because I'm not sure Michael Pratt plays in this game. I know that he's come out and said that he doesn't want to transfer. I don't believe him, especially with Willie Fritz moving on to Houston. So if Michael Pratt plays in this game, I think they have a decent chance at winning and will definitely keep it close. But if he doesn't play, then I don't think this is going to be a close game. I don't know what Tulane's backup quarterback situation is, but I don't particularly think it's probably going to be good enough to deal with a Power 5 level of program in Virginia Tech. So for the purposes of this discussion in this video, I am going to assume that Michael Pratt is going to play, because I haven't heard anything to the contrary. And even with Michael Pratt playing, I'm still going to pick Virginia Tech to win this game by the score of 23-21. Up next is the Duke's Mayo Bowl, which could have been a very, very cool and very interesting matchup between two of the better Power 5 conference teams in West Virginia and North Carolina. Instead, no one's going to watch this game, because why would they? Drake May was the only reason people were going to watch this game. He has declared for the draft and opted out, which I understand. He doesn't want to risk injury, but, you know, it sucks for the quality of the product, but it is what it is. I can't stop him, and I don't particularly think I probably should have the ability to stop him. But when it comes to this game specifically, I don't know what North Carolina's backup quarterback situation is. They haven't had anybody really get any significant snaps at that position, so I guess we'll find out, but I'm going to go with what I've seen on film so far this year, and with the amount of people that are opting out on both sides of this game or transferring. There are also a bunch of transfers. That's the bulk of the people who aren't playing in this game. We have no clue what either of these teams are going to look like, so I don't really know, but if I had to bet my gut on it, West Virginia, at least at the time of me recording this video, does not have a quarterback in the transfer portal or declaring for the draft and skipping the bowl game. So I'm going to go with West Virginia to win the game. I've just kind of picked a random score. I said West Virginia 31, North Carolina 21, but I don't know what this game is going to look like at all. Next one up is the Holiday Bowl, and this one is pretty easy. Louisville is going to absolutely destroy USC. Louisville has had some transfers and opt-outs and stuff like that, but it's mainly been they're too deep or guys who weren't playing at all. USC has lost like almost everything, so I don't really see any scenario where they're even competitive in this game. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it. Now, next year, USC's got a new defensive coordinator. We'll see how shit works out, but I don't know how that's going to play. So I am going to take Louisville to win this game 41-17. Next bowl is a similar story to the previous one. This is the Texas Bowl between Oklahoma State and Texas A&M. And Texas A&M has had like their top 20 best players enter the transfer portal. So I don't see any real scenario where they're going to be competitive with an Oklahoma State team that does have its fair share of transfers as well. But at least at this moment in time when I'm recording this, Ollie Gordon has neither opted out of the bowl game or announced that he's going to transfer. So Oklahoma State's offense still should be able to do what they've kind of done all year. So I am going to go with Oklahoma State to win this game by the score of 28-10. Up next, the Fenway Bowl, and both of these teams have, relatively speaking, been able to kind of keep their teams together, at least so far. For all I know, 20 people for both of these teams are going to enter the transfer portal tomorrow, but for right now, they've kind of kept their teams together, and I just flat out and straight up believe that SMU is a significantly better football team than Boston College, and also a tremendously bad matchup for Boston College. Like, Boston College has been pretty decent on the defensive side of the ball when they're playing a team that they can force into doing one thing. If they're able to force you into just being a passing offense, the defense has been okay. If they've been able to force you into just being a rushing offense, the defense has been okay. But there's no scenario where they can force SMU to do either of those things. They're too good running the football, and they're too good passing the ball for Boston College to be able to defend, in my opinion. So I think SMU is going to win this game fairly easily and by a score of 37-17. Next one up is actually a fairly interesting matchup, in my opinion, and that is Miami of Florida versus Rutgers. Now, the transfer portal has kind of gotten Miami fairly bad. Namely, starting quarterback Tyler Van Dyke has entered the transfer portal. So we don't know what the offense is going to look like. I don't think it'll be all that much better or worse, because I don't particularly think Tyler Van Dyke was a difference maker, at least in the scheme that Miami was running this year. And also the backup, Williams, does have some experience this year, and he looked pretty okay. So I think we're going to see a Miami team that is close to 100%, probably not as good as they could have been had not all of the transfers transferred out, but I don't think it's going to hurt them all that much. And the one sort of outside factor, like off of the field factor of this game, is going to be that this is a big game for Rutgers. If they win this game, then all of a sudden they're a program that's made 2 bowl games under Greg Schiano and won one of them. So this is a big game for Rutgers, and this game means nothing for Miami. I mean, it means objectively nothing, and they're probably not going to play very hard, and I think Rutgers is. I think Rutgers has a good defense that will be able to limit the backup quarterback of Miami a little bit, and I think Miami's defense is a little bit susceptible to the power run sort of offense that Rutgers runs. So I think Rutgers is going to be able to grind out a close victory here by the score of 21-20. This matchup in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, much like the product, is elite. There is nothing better than a cherry Pop-Tart, and there is nothing better than 2 defense-oriented teams that have gotten absolutely bent over a table by the transfer portal, matching up in a meaningless bowl game. This is, beyond a shadow of a doubt, my favorite matchup in the college football bowl game season, because it is going to be so sloppy and so much fun to watch. So for both of these teams, Kansas State probably was the better football team for the majority of this year. Will Howard is not there. I don't know if Avery Johnson is going to transfer or stick around. If he does, then I think the offense has a chance to be a little bit more competent than North Carolina's offense does. MJ Morris, who has played quite a bit this year, has decided to transfer. The quarterback for South Carolina, technically the backup quarterback, or at least entering the year, he was the backup quarterback, and Brennan Armstrong was the starting quarterback. But I think MJ Morris, for the most part, played better than Brennan Armstrong. And I don't particularly think Brennan Armstrong's style of play, which is more run-oriented and quick pass-oriented, is going to be effective against a Kansas State defense that, even though they've lost some talent to the transfer portal, is still probably going to be technically sound and playing at a high level. So I am predicting Kansas State to win this game by the score of 17-14. Up next is the Gator Bowl between Clemson and Kentucky. Now, there actually hasn't been as many transfers in this game as there are in others, at least not in terms of impactful transfers. Now, Clemson has lost a lot of talent in the secondary to the transfer portal, Makuba and Pride Jr., but that doesn't particularly matter because they're playing a Devin O'Leary-led Kentucky offense. So, yeah, they're not throwing the ball for anything. I think Clemson's athletes are going to be able to keep this game in check for the most part. Kentucky does have a fair amount of NFL talent as well, but when it comes down to it, I just think Clemson is playing to win this game. I think Kentucky is just kind of here. So I am going to predict Clemson to win this game by the score of 20-17. I do think it'll be close. I do think it'll be a defensive matchup where a turnover here or there will probably decide the game. But when it comes down to it, I think Clemson will make the plays that they need to win the game, and I don't trust Kentucky to do that. This next game, the Sun Bowl, is a game that could have meant something, but due to the transfer portal and the rules surrounding it, now means absolutely nothing. This was an interesting matchup to look at when it first announced. However, I didn't put a lot of energy into thinking about it because I knew it was going to get ruined by opt-outs and the transfer portal. I mean, Austin Estime and Sam Hartman are probably going to declare for the draft and also probably not play in this game for Notre Dame, along with a plethora of other players that have entered the transfer portal. And with Oregon State, you had your starting quarterback, who actually played very, very good this year, DJ Uiagalelei, enter the transfer portal after the head coach went to Michigan State. So you're thinking, oh, that's cool. We got this high 4-star freshman who's going to come in and maybe play. We'll get a head start. Nope, he's going in the transfer portal too. So yeah, the schedule of the college football world has effectively ruined this bowl game. And maybe this was a video that I probably should make, or probably should have mentioned it in a previous video. But the transfer portal should absolutely not be open before 2024. Like, it should probably open like January 1st or the first Monday of January. So I don't know, but it is what it is. It's a topic for another time. This game specifically, I have no clue what's going to happen, but Oregon State doesn't have a quarterback or a ability to run the ball that I think is going to be effective against this Notre Dame front seven. So I am going to say Notre Dame wins the game 21-13. Next is the Liberty Bowl between Memphis and Iowa State. And Memphis has been one of the most consistent Group of Five programs of the past decade or so. And Iowa State has been one of the most inconsistent programs in the Power Five of the past few years. However, Iowa State this year has been playing very, very good football, very technically sound football. They've been playing defense at an extraordinarily high level, and the offense has been competent enough for them to win some games this year. And when it comes down to it, though, I think that Iowa State just has a better coaching staff and probably a better matchup than Memphis. And more importantly, I think they have better athletes top to bottom than Memphis does. Unlike previous Memphis teams that I think could score on anybody, I don't believe that this is the case. I think they are held back a little bit by their talent level this year. And because of that, I am going to predict Iowa State to win this game pretty handedly by the score of 35-17. Up next is one of the few and far between actually interesting matchups where both teams are almost at 100% here. And it's also a good matchup here. Maryland's passing offense has been their bread and butter this year, and Auburn's passing defense has actually been pretty good. And Maryland's defense has also been pretty solid when it can turn you into a one-dimensional football team, which Auburn does by themselves. So this is a pretty interesting matchup. I don't really think either of these teams are going to hit their normal point total, so to speak, in this game. I do think it'll be a little bit more defensive than other people perhaps might think. But when it comes down to it, I think Maryland right now has a bit of a better football team than Auburn. I think that even though Auburn's pass defense has been pretty good this year, I believe that Maryland's passing offense will still be at least somewhat effective. And I do also think that their run game with Hemby is a little bit underrated. And defensively for Maryland, I think Auburn is going to try to just flat out and straight out physical this team and run the ball pretty much the entire time, which will make it a lower scoring, quicker kind of game, which is another reason why the point total is perhaps not going to be as high as one might anticipate. All in all, when it's all said and done, I do believe that Tulila Tagovailoa will ultimately get this team the victory in the Music City Bowl. So I am going to predict Maryland to win this game 27-21. This next game is, once again, which has been a theme in these two videos, been ruined by the transfer portal. Daquan Finn, the quarterback for Toledo, who has been tremendously good for them this year and will likely have success at the Power 5 level wherever he transfers next year, is not playing in this game because he has entered the transfer portal. Wyoming otherwise has had pretty much their whole team stay intact. Toledo has had some other transfers and some other guys saying they're going to stop playing so they can go to the draft. And Wyoming already heading into this game had a pretty favorable matchup in my opinion. So without their starting quarterback, I don't think Toledo has much of a chance to win this game. Even though I really like Jason Candle as a head coach and think he's turned this program into a legitimately consistent group of 5 team who should compete for MAC titles every single year. Nevertheless, however, I think Wyoming is going to win this game 24-10. Up next is the ReliaQuest Bowl between Wisconsin and LSU. And Wisconsin doesn't have a shot in hell of winning this game unless Jaden Daniels doesn't play. But as of this moment in time, Jaden Daniels has not said he is going to skip this bowl game. So I'm going to assume that Jaden Daniels is going to play. And with that happening, LSU is going to win this game by a significant margin. There is no shot in hell that Wisconsin will be able to score enough points to win this game. So I think LSU is going to win this game 41-21. If Jaden Daniels doesn't play, then you can kind of throw that out the window, and maybe Wisconsin should even then be favored if Jaden Daniels doesn't end up playing. But I don't know if he's going to play or not. Right now, I'm going to assume that he is going to play, which is why the score is what it is. If in the future he says he's going to skip the bowl game and just prepare for the NFL draft, then sorry, I guess. I got this one wrong. The final bowl game we're going to be talking about is the Citrus Bowl between Tennessee and Iowa. And this game has Big Ten West written all over it. I don't think Iowa is going to be able to move the ball at all against an extraordinarily underrated Tennessee defense. Ultimately, what I think is going to allow Tennessee to pull ahead is going to be Joe Milton running the football as well as the explosive run plays that they've gotten in pretty much every game this year. I mean, the secret to this is that Iowa's defense is absolutely incredible. They're fantastic at creating turnovers, and Joel Milton isn't the most careful quarterback when it comes to throwing the football. So I do think Iowa is going to be able to generate a few turnovers in this game, maybe 2 or 3, but I don't particularly think it'll matter because I don't see them scoring a touchdown really in any situation. I think Tennessee's defense is too good and too talented in order to allow that to happen. And even if they do get favorable field positions off of turnovers, then unless they can take the ball and just score on defense, I don't particularly see how this is going to end up being a win for Iowa. So I'm going to predict Tennessee to win this game 14-9. But that's just me, and what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. So it's at this point I'd like to remind you to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagreed with me or you just have something to say, go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. So with the outro out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time.